Hi, welcome back to Faith and Conviction, and I'm your host, Ray Harris. I want to welcome you to this week's Torah portion. We are still in the book of Numbers, and we are looking at Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 through 18, verse 32. We are in Torah portion 38, and the name of this one is Korah, Korach in the Hebrew. Korah, which translates over into English as bald, as in without hair. So it is an interesting name this time. In the Hebrew, the book that we are in is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. We know the book as Numbers. So let us take a look at what's going on. Now, our key word again is Korah, and it's a Hebrew's Strong's numbering H7141. Our key word is the second word in Numbers 16, verse 1. Numbers 16, verse 1, our second word is our key word. So Korah. So what does Brown Driver Briggs say that Korah means? Brown Driver Briggs says it means bald, and I would guess it means a state of baldness, like a noun. But it comes from the Hebrew word Korach, which is another Hebrew word. It is H7139, so Korah is related to this other one, which means to be bald, to make a baldness, to make oneself bald. So Korah is the state of being bald, and it comes from the verb to make bald, which is a process you have to go through. So, in this, let's take a look at what does bald mean, because this is a symbolism issue with this event here in Numbers, and we need to look at it as what happens, not just as a sequence of events, but what is Korah living up to? And so we have to look at it as a type of symbology. So what is the symbolism of bald? Well, right now I have hair, and if I was to go completely bald, I would be without my hair covering. So to be bald would be to be without a covering. It also means to be barren or to be brazen, like you have the gall to come up to somebody and do something. It also means undisguised. Bald means undisguised. So you're bringing forth your true self. So you're also, if you're bald, you're destitute of natural covering. And I think all of these ideas of definitions apply as symbolism when we look at what happens here in Numbers 16 and possibly down in chapter 17 when you look at Korah and the events. So Numbers 16, 1 to 35 records Korah's rebellion, and Numbers 17, 1 to 28 records Israel's uprising and plague. So in a sense, they're suffering the same fate as Korah because they suffer death in the plague. So Korah showed that he had no rebellion in the things that he did. And then Israel itself in chapter 17 is showing disrespect to God's anointed. So both Korah and then the nation show disrespect to Moses as God's chosen one who is anointed to lead those people and to teach them certain things that God wants them to have learning. So it's an interesting thing when we sit there and we go through this teaching. So I was like, okay, how do we connect this teaching and this thought and see how important it is to know the Hebrew and the Greek, see the Greek of the New Testament, and come all the way over here into the English? Well, there's a couple of different things that came to my mind as I was studying this. One of them is actually down in the book of Jude, and we will get there here in a little bit. But then there was something else that came to my mind that we find over in the book of 2 Kings. Now in 2 Kings chapter 2, 12 to 25, we find Elisha getting Elijah's mantle for being a prophet, and his interactions that happen shortly thereafter. Now, we do know that Elisha is asked to heal the water. And after he heals the water, Elisha is mocked twice by some people who called him bald head. So they're mocking him. Now, it's very interesting to me. I've heard much about this passage as I've gone through my work in the church and talked with people. But in the English, it seems to lose its sense. We don't necessarily look at bald men as mockery. I mean, we might mock them in fun, but it's not mocking them in severity of spiritual condition. Now, when we look at the text and we see how many times We have 3 iterations of this and 2 iterations of this. Well, it's interesting that Elisha asked for twice the amount of Elijah's covering. And he receives it because of the way in which Elisha is taken up into the air. Now, Elijah goes in the air and Elisha stays back down on the ground. And then what you have later on is you have Elisha being mocked, ridiculed twice, saying, bald head, bald head. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense until you look at it in the non-vowel pointed Hebrew. When you look at it in the non-vowel pointed Hebrew, it reads exactly the way Korah's name is spelled in Hebrew. So really what these people are doing is they are calling Elisha Korah, Korah. And what of course happens with Korah in number 16? He is proven not to be God's anointed. And what has Elisha proven over in 2 Kings 2? To be God's anointed. So they're insulting his twice mantle 2 times, which is kind of a powerful mockery. So they're saying he's twice uncovered, which is not true. And when you see how Elisha reacts to that mockery, it is really powerful. And it kind of begins to explain something that's very difficult for me in the Hebrew text. Why would a prophet react such a way? Well, it's not because he was mocked. It's really because the people are saying he has no right to be a prophet. So they're trying to remove his covering. So that is actually a very powerful teaching about how important it is to have God give you a covering. Second of all, let's go down into Jude and let's look at verse 11 because it gives a reference to Korah. It says, "Woe unto them, for they have gone the way of Cain and ran greedily after the error of Balaam. For reward, perished in the gainsaying of Korah," says the new King James New Testament. But it's Korah. So when you're looking there and you find a different spelling in the King James, they spell it Corey. But other translations have it as Korah, as evidenced in the English Standard Version saying, perished in Korah's rebellion. So even Jude is talking about how powerful it is to know what happens here in number 16. 2 Kings chapter 2 talks about what it means to receive an insult and not to take that insult lightly when you're insulting God's covering. So it's actually very, very important. So as people who are following Jesus, we're following him as a Messiah, he teaches us to learn from Moses. And by doing the connective points for the Hebrew word down through the translation of the Greek Old Testament into the Greek New Testament over into English, we are beginning to see how powerful the connection points are between Messiah and Moses. That these men, God worked through Moses, God worked through Messiah, and they're both pointing to the power, not of the written word, but the power of God who has given the revealed word, and why it's important that he has sent men on certain missions to accomplish certain things for God's kingdom. This is actually very important, and it's very powerful. So this time it went beyond just a semantic connection point between the New Testament and the Old. It really is a powerful connection of anointed one of Moses, an anointed one of Elijah, an anointed one of Messiah, and an anointed one where Jude was permitted to record this. It's actually very cool and very powerful. Hope it's been a blessing to you this week. Until next time, continue to seek God, know Messiah, find hope.